Welcome to UIStackView on iOS 9. This lightning lecture is going to introduce you to one of the most interesting features of iOS 9, and it's probably going to change the way you work with auto layout and layout constraints. My name is René, and if you have any questions or comments on this topic, feel free to contact me. My email address can be seen here on this slide. Let's think about table view for a moment before we dive into stack view. With table view, we create cells and we then just pass these cells over to the table view. And the table view then takes care of the layout really. For instance, if the device rotates, it's going to adjust our cells. And we don't really have to worry about positioning the cells. Instead, we just let the table view do that job. It knows what padding it's going to apply, how much indentation is necessary, and so on. And UIStackView kind of works similarly. What we do is we pass it a collection of views and then we tell it what to do with them. We could tell it something like, take these views and distribute them vertically with equal spacing and equal height and keep them centered. Now these are fairly complex rules and it's very easy to express these rules with UIStackView. UIStackView has multiple properties that we can use. The basic idea of a stack view is that we can either say whether it's vertically or horizontally aligned. For that, we're going to set the stack view's axis. The next thing we have here is the alignment. The alignment influences how the stack view positions subviews perpendicularly to the axis. So that means if the current axis is horizontal, then the alignment affects the vertical positioning of the views. There are a couple of values that we can use here. Top is the one that is only suitable for horizontal layouts. Then we have bottom. We have trailing. Trailing means to the right if the layout is horizontal. And it's exactly the same as bottom if we are in vertical mode. Furthermore, we have fill, which means use up whatever space you have. Then we have center, which is going to center either horizontally or vertically. Again, that's going to depend on the axis. Besides the alignment, we can also influence the distribution. The distribution defines how the subviews are going to be placed along the axis. So it's kind of the opposite of alignment. The options that we have here are fill. That means the views will be resized according to their hugging resistance. That means if the width or height has to be increased, the hugging resistance is going to be taken into account. And it's also going to honor the compression resistance. And that is used if the width or height has to be decreased. In the left example that you see here on the slide, the last child view's width was increased in order to fill the layout width. The next option we have is fill equally. Fill equally works pretty much like fill, but all the views that we have are going to get the same width or height. Then we have an option to fill proportionally. That's going to take into account the intrinsic content sizes, which means that if a view is larger, it's going to be increased more than another one. We also can fill with equal spacing. That's going to fill up the available layout space by adding spacing between the views. And if the views are too wide, it's going to shrink them. Equal centering, that's probably the least intuitive one. Equal centering tries to keep equal spacing between the centers of all views. But the views' widths or heights, they can be different. I've been trying to think of a good example when to use that, and I just couldn't come up with one. If you know one, please let me know. In the previous slide, when we talked about distribution, we heard that we can have equal spacing. So that means there must be a way to define the space between views. And for that, we got a spacing property. That's just a float value that controls how much space is going to be left between the views. And it is interpreted differently. For the distribution fill equally, it is the minimum value. And for fill proportionally, it's used as a strict value. Internally, UIStackView maintains two lists of subviews. That's pretty interesting. Let's try to analyze that a bit. The UIStackView is a subclass of UIView. We probably have all used UIView directly before, so we know that every UIView has got a subviews array. And we can add subviews to any UI view by calling add subview. Now, since UIStackView is a subclass of UI view, of course it also has this functionality. We can find the subviews property there. And indeed, everything that we put into the subviews array is going to be rendered. However, the UIStackView also maintains an array that's called arranged views. And this array always is a subset of the views that we currently have in the subviews array. Every view that is inside this particular array is going to be positioned and resized automatically. So again, everything in subviews is going to be rendered just like with any other UI view, but everything inside arranged views is going to be rendered and laid out. There are a couple of simple rules if we talk about the subviews and the arranged views array. If you remove from subviews, it's also going to be removed from arranged views. Well, that's obvious. Arranged views is always a subset of subviews. However, if you remove from the arranged views, it is not going to remove from subviews automatically. The view will remain a part of the view hierarchy and it's potentially going to stay on screen. If you add something to the arranged views, it's going to be added automatically to the subviews too. If you want to add to the arranged views property, we have some specific methods that we're going to use. So there's add arranged view and remove arranged view. You can also assign directly to that array. Even though UIStackView is a subclass of UI view, it behaves a bit differently and it's special in some sense. There are these methods that we already discussed to manipulate the arranged views array, but there are other things that don't work as expected. For instance, setting the background color simply has no effect. You can check out Apple's documentation if you're interested in the details. Let me show you how you can use UIStackView directly from your code. We're going to see how we can add arranged views here, how we set up the required constraints, and finally also how we can animate UIStackView. I am inside Xamarin Studio and I want to run my demo application here that I'm going to use to show the StackView features. I'm going to switch over to the simulator. This is what we start with. What you see here is a single storyboard application, and it's got a button here at the bottom, and the black area here, this is just a regular view that I added, and it's got constraints here that attach it to the view controllers view. In there, we're going to add our stack view. So let's switch back to the code here. We go to the viewcontroller.cs file, and in view.load, I now want to add my stack view here. UIStackView is just a regular view, so I can new that up in here. Let's create a little stack view. That's a new UIStackView. And then I can set all kinds of properties here. Like I want to probably define the axis that we use here. So you see axis, that's of type UI layout constraint axis. And we want to make this one here vertical. The next thing that we're going to set is the alignment. Our alignment initially is going to be trailing. Trailing means, in our case, things are going to move to the right. Remember, alignment, that's how the views are arranged perpendicular to the stack views axis. So trailing means it's going to be pushed to the right. Leading would mean it's going to go to the left because this is a vertical layout. The next thing we have is distribution. Distribution is also strongly typed here. It's UIStackView distribution. And for our initial distribution, we want to use equal spacing. So all the views we add are going to have equal space between them. And we want to define that spacing. That's the spacing property. Let's set that to 10. And because we work in code here, and we will have to add some constraints later, you may not forget to turn off the translates auto resizing mask into constraints. So that's always true for all views if you work with them in code and want to use auto layout constraints. Now, the next thing to do is to add our stack view here to our test view. And that's it. If I run that now, I'm not going to see anything because there are no constraints in place. So nothing tells the stack view where to put itself. So let's add the necessary constraints. If you have worked with constraints before, you probably use the Anis layout constraint.create method and just look at all of these parameters. Often if we use this factory method, it's not so obvious what we really achieve. It involves view 1, view 2, the relationship, a couple of attributes, multiplier, constants. Most of the time we don't need all of these attributes. If we run on iOS 9, we can use a new API. So it's much easier to read. Let me show you that. So first thing is we want to add a constraint to the test view. So I'm going to start with that. Add a constraint. Now, instead of using the NSLayout constraint.create, I say, what is the other view that is involved here? The first view, well, that's test view. That's where we add the constraint. And the other one, that's our stack view. And the stack view now exposes a couple of anchors. Say we want to constrain the top anchor here. So we use top anchor. Now we can say constrain equal to, that's exactly what we want. We want a constraint that is equal to some distance to the parent view. We constrain equal to. And what is it we want to constrain to? Well, that's our test view. And inside the test view, it's the top anchor. We want to attach the top of our stack view to the top of our test view. And I can also define the constant, but look, this is optional, so I can just omit that. That's going to attach it directly. And I'm going to do the same for the bottom, the left, and the right anchor now. It's a bit like in these cooking shows. I have already prepared this here for you. So here we go. We add a constraint at the bottom, at the left, and at the right. And I think that's much more readable than the good old NSLayout constraint.create. So what else do we need? Well, the stack view itself doesn't contain anything at the moment. So we want to create a couple of test views that we're going to add here to our stack view. And I simply going to give them different colors. So I'm going to start with a red view here. And instead of using a regular UI view, I want to use what's called my demo view here. Let me show you that. Demo view is a class that is up here and it derives from UI view. All it does is it takes a size as its only constructor parameter here, and that size is returned as the intrinsic content size. That is necessary because stack view works with the intrinsic sizes of the objects. So most objects that you use out of the box, like a text view or a label, they already have an intrinsic content size, but a plain UI view doesn't. So that's why I created this helper class here. And this allows me to now define differently sized views. So we're going to make our red one here a size of 150, and we're going to set the background color here to be red. And I'm going to add a couple of more, a blue, a green, and a yellow. Here they are, red, blue, green, and yellow. And you see they all have different sizes, different widths, and different heights. Now we want to add these to our stack view. This dot, no, it's not this dot, it's just our stack view. And stack view.add subview. No, hang on a second. Remember, stack view is a UI view, so it exposes an add subview method. However, what we want to do here is we want to add these views to the arranged views. We want to make sure that stack view properly takes care of the layout here. So the method that we really want to use here is add arranged subview. That's going to add it to the array of arranged subviews, and it's also going to add it to the regular subview array. And here we're going to add the red one and also the others, blue, green, yellow. Quickly copy these. So we have blue here, green, and yellow. With that code in place, it should already work. Now, that's really all there is. Let's run that here on an iPhone 6s. And here we have it. And that's the result. So let's compare this visually here to our code. We see that the views are really arranged vertically. The alignment is trailing, so it's going to push them all to the far right here. We have equal spacing here in between. And we can change these now. So say instead of making these trailing, we say we want to fill. What's going to happen? Well, we expect the views to be resized so they fill up the entire space horizontally. That's really what happens. Notice that now it's simply ignoring our intrinsic content width. So even though we set our views here, for instance, the red one, we say we want that to be 100. If the mode of the stack view is set to fill, well, it's going to fill it. And likewise, I can play with the other properties. And if I run that, no matter what iPhone or which iPad, it's always going to scale nicely. Now let me undo this here. We want to go back to trailing here. And we want to add some dynamic. Remember, we still have this button down there, and we want to use the button to, well, trigger different actions on the stack view. I want to show you those. So let me wire up a event handler here. Now first, let's go ahead and switch the stack view's axis on the fly. And I'm going to say the stack view dot axis toggles, so we compare if the current value is vertical, then we want to make it horizontal, and vice versa. And go vertical here. Well, let's run that. I'm going to press the button, and you see it flips the axis here. Let's try another one. We can influence the spacing dynamically. So here we switch between 10 and 1. Going to bring up the simulator once more. It updates immediately. All of these changes, they are really nice. That means it allows you to create a pretty flexible layout that even changes dynamically, either to user input or to some events. But what is really cool, I think, actually it's cooler than cool, it's the fact that we can animate all these changes. Let me bring in a little snippet here that demonstrates that. You might have used this call, this UI view animate, in other situations when you maybe move a view from one location to another on screen. It turns out that all of the properties that we have just seen are actually animatable. So look what we're doing here. We toggle the axis, we change the spacing. Well, let me change that to what we had there before. We had 10 and 1 before to have the same effect. We switch the alignment. If it's currently center, we switch it to trailing, and otherwise we go back to center. I also toggle the distribution here. If it's currently equal spacing, I switch it to fill equally, and we go back again. Now watch what happens if I run that inside this animation block. Now this is really nice. What do you think? See how it transitions from a vertical layout into a horizontal layout, how it resizes the views, and we have this nice ease in and ease out effect. While it is possible to use UIStackView directly from the code, I personally think that most of the time you're going to use it in the designer. Have a look at this relatively simple layout here. We have a label up here, we have another one there, we have a text field there, another label, then we got a text view, we have a button down here, and an image on the top right. Now, that's not too complex, yet we have many constraints in there. You see all these little handles there. Now imagine what happens if you have to add another view here. Maybe you want to put something here between the headline and the occupation label. You got to rearrange all of your views, got to change the frames, and then you're going to start updating all of the constraints. That can be really painful. We can convert this layout to use StackView. So here's the idea. This layout consists of a couple of rows and columns. We just got to identify them. So we start by wrapping the entire thing into one vertical UI stack view. This is also the view that we are going to constrain against the controller's views boundaries. This stack view has got 3 parts. So we fill horizontally within these 3 rows that we have there with equal spacing. In the top section, we're going to place the header with the image. In the middle section, we're going to place the text view, and at the bottom, we're going to have our button. Now, if we only have this single UI stack view, it's not going to work because obviously it's vertically aligned, but the image of Bart Simpson here is right aligned to the other header views up there. But what we can do is we can nest UI stack views. So up there, we're going to insert a horizontal UI stack view into the vertical one. On the right side of that horizontal one, we're going to have the image. Now on the left side, there's again something that is vertically aligned. So we just repeat the process over. Into the left part, we're going to add another vertical layout. This is again going to fill the available space, and in there we're going to put the label for the headline and the text field and so on. So let's try that out in the designer. This is our storyboard opened now in the Xcode 7 interface builder view. We gotta edit the storyboard in here because only Xcode is currently capable of dealing with the new stack view. Xamarin is going to add support to Xamarin Studio and Visual Studio soon, but till then you can always open any storyboard directly in Xcode. That happens by right-clicking in Xamarin Studio and select Open With and then Xcode Interface Builder. So on the left side, that's the original view controller. That's what we've been building. This one has all the constraints in here. And I'm now going to convert that over into this new view controller by using StackView. The first thing we're going to add is the outermost stack view. So remember, we want to split this into a couple of nested stack views. So we're going to start with a vertical one. And I'm just going to drag that in. I can search here for stack view. That's going to be a vertical one. I'm going to pull that in here. And we want to align that here a bit using these guidelines. Pull it here, there. And for this stack view, now we're going to add the required constraints. So I want to attach this top left and bottom right. And we can do that in Xcode down here. All we have to do is use this triangle icon here. And I can tap it, and here it says add missing constraints for the selected view. That's what I want. And you see it adds the one here at the bottom and at the left and the right and the top side. Because we're going to have a lot of nested stack views, I'm going to give this one here a name so we can later easily identify it. I go here on the left side where it says view controller scene. I see that's the stack view. I tap it once, I tap it again. Now I can edit the name. So that's our outer vertical stack view, or outer vertical stack. That's just enough. Just helps us to identify it later. The next step is to think what's now inside our stack view. I'm going to split the layout into different parts. So we're going to use this part here, starting with the headline, including the label here, the edit field that we have here, and Bart's image here. We're all going to put this in the topmost row of our vertical layout. And you can already tell by now that this is going to be another stack layout. So this one's here going to be vertical combined with a horizontal one. So we're going to start by dropping in another horizontal one here. That's going to be the one with all the information about Bart Simpson on the left side and the image on the right. If you look here at the document outline, you can see that we have now another stack view nested inside our outer stack view. So again, I'm going to give that a name here so I can identify it. That's going to be our top horizontal stack. The next step is working with the stack layout that we have just added. And again, we have to split it. So here we have now the horizontal one. It's going to contain this part here and the image. And inside the horizontal one, on the left side, we're going to have a vertical one, and we got to have the image on the right. So let's go ahead and drop yet another one in here. And again, you know this by now, I give it a name. So that's my, I don't know, header stack vertical. And now let's finally copy over some UI elements. There's no need to recreate everything. I can just select the existing element. So I'm going to start with this label here. And if I start dragging, I would move it over. But if I keep the Option key pressed, you see this green plus sign here. That means it's going to create a copy. And I'm going to copy it over here inside our stack view. I'm going to repeat this step for the other elements here. So the next one is our occupation label. And as you see now, we already have an element here in the stack view. And you can see this blue line here. If I drop the label here, it's going to put it above the currently existing element or below. I want to place it below, so let's go here. We have the occupation now. The next one is this text field here. Again, I can drop it here. If I'm unsure if I get the correct insertion point here, I can also drop it over here, by the way. So that works just as well. And now we have our first header layout almost complete. What is pretty interesting here is the fact that all constraints have been removed while I copied the elements. So let me show you this quickly. If I select, for instance, this one here over in the old layout, and I go to the inspector, you can see that it's got quite a couple of constraints attached here: leading spaces, trailing space, and so on. Now if I select the same element over here, notice that all the constraints are gone. However, obviously the alignment is not correct yet. So this label here, it eats up almost all of the space and it pushes the rest here down towards the bottom. But don't worry about that. We're going to fix that as we go. Our next step will now be to drop in the image. Look at our document outline here on the left side. And let me make that a bit bigger. You see we have the outer vertical stack, the top horizontal stack. Inside we have the header stack. Now I'm going to collapse that, and we want to bring the image into the top horizontal one. Now I can again grab it here and copy it over here. However, this time it's maybe not that easy to drop it at the right spot. So you can see here it puts it into the top horizontal layout, but if you keep on nesting these views, it might be harder and harder to hit the right spot here. So in this case, I'm rather going to drop it in here. And on purpose, I'm going to drop it on the wrong side here. So now it's on the left. And I want to show you that you can just grab it in here in the document outline and reorder these things. Actually, I have to take the header and move it up. And you see now they simply swap sides. Now that's our top header, and again, we haven't adjusted the heights yet. We're gonna do that afterwards. Header part of our layout is now done. I'm gonna collapse here the top horizontal stack, and we're gonna go on with this label here, the big text view, and the button. So that one here, that notes label, well, again, I'm gonna grab it, and I'm gonna use the document outline here, and we want to put that into the vertical stack. Now be sure to get the right insertion point. Here it is. And now it put it somewhere here. Now that's wrong. Gotta be careful there. Move it into the vertical one, and we want to make them swap positions like that. And you see magically now our layout, it looks already a lot better. That's because now it grants all the available space here to our notes caption label, and it pushes our stack view to the top. Now next is our text view. Again, copy it, and this is the right spot to insert it. We now have the top horizontal stack in the outer vertical stack, we have the notes in there, and we have the text view in there. And finally, we're gonna copy over our save button. There it is. And you see now this doesn't look very good. We got a couple of cues here that something is wrong, so there seems to be some sort of constraint error. We're gonna fix that. But other than that, well, I'd say it's pretty close. Remember that we probably won't get 100% identical layout. If we use constraints, we have these constant constraints saying we want to push this element exactly 53 pixels away from the other element. You got to stop thinking that way if you use the stack view. Instead, you got to think, well, how do I want to arrange my views, and then basically let iOS decide about the spacing. We have some influence there. You know, we have alignment, distribution, and spacing. But if you want this precise control, well, then you gotta stick with individual constraints. However, we can still tweak this layout a bit. So let's start with the Save button down here. Maybe we don't want that to be full size. However, if you look at our parent view here, the parent view is a vertical stack. Now, remember the different settings on our stack layout. I switch over here and I go to the correct tab here. Well, we say the axis is vertical. Obviously, that's correct. Our alignment is set to fill. Our distribution is also fill, and we haven't provided any spacing here. So what if we don't want that button to have the full width? Well, in that case, we want to have a look at the properties here. So alignment, let's wait a minute here until the tip pops up here. The alignment, that's what aligns the subviews perpendicular to the stack views axis. So that would align horizontally, since this is a vertical layout. Now distribution, that arranges along the stack views axis. So what do we want to change here? Well, the problem that we have is probably alignment. Our problem is that the Save button expands horizontally. So I can change that here to either be leading, center, or trailing. Let's make it center. Now, we have fixed our button. However, now it also affects all the other elements of the vertical layout. And you notice that it's also the header here. Now the header gets centered. Well, that's not what we want. That's a bit of a problem sometimes, that it's this all or nothing approach. If we want to fix that, well, we could, for instance, go ahead and wrap our Save button into another stack view, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go back here, Command C, and I select the Save button here, and down here you see this little icon. It's an arrow pointing downwards that converts a selected view into a stack view. So I select my Save button and press this one here. And you see it took the button here and it placed it into another stack view. And now I can go ahead and change the alignment of my innermost stack view here. And in here, I want to center. And now the button is centered within that and only that inner stack view without affecting the other ones. So the next thing we want to fix is the spacing. Currently, we don't have any spacing here between the text view and our Save button. Well, again, let's pick the stack view that this belongs to. And we want to say maybe this has got a spacing of 10 over here. And you see, as soon as I press return, that's done. Likewise, we want to have some spacing here between the text field and the image. So that's our horizontal stack. Select that one and also give that some spacing here. And then you can start playing with the settings here. We could go ahead and let me expand that. Remember, in here we had the vertical one, this one, and maybe we want to move this headline here all the way to the top. Instead of saying fill, we want to have equal spacing. It's going to push it up. But now we got the same spacing that is also going to be used for the occupation label here and for the entry field. How do we fix it? The same trick that we used down here. Just merge all the elements that you want to treat individually into another stack view. So I can select the occupation here and this one, and again click this button down here, and it's going to merge it into another nested stack view. So my advice is that you really give proper names here to the views, otherwise it's can get a bit messy and it's hard to keep the overview. But with this last change, I'm pretty happy with this layout. And now you got something that works without any constraints. The only constraints are here for the outermost stack view. And that means if you take that stack view and put it somewhere else, all the content is going to resize nicely. This is going to work on the iPhone, on the iPad, wherever you run it. Also, of course, if you want to add another element to that layout, you can simply drag it in and drop it into the appropriate stack view. And everything's going to rearrange nicely. There's no need to change any constraint. There's no need to fix any frames in the designer. It's just going to work. With this, we have arrived at the end of this lightning lecture. I really hope you enjoy it. If you would like to contact me, feel free to send me an email. That's René@Xamarin.com.